How to create an auto sequence here in Excel. Here I have a couple of subjects, and whenever I add a new subject, let's say history, and then I'm gonna press enter, a new number is added here for me following the previous sequence. And the interesting thing is, no matter how many rows do you skip, if you want to add for whatever reason in the row number 10 a new subject right here, let's say science for example, and then I'm gonna press enter, the new number is added for you following the previous sequence. So I know it could look a little bit tricky to make something like this in Excel, but actually it's not. I'm going to show you step by step why should you use the if function, why should you use the max function, and why should you use the COUNTA function. Okay, you can just copy and paste this function right here. However, if you want to learn how to use step by step all these three functions, stay with me in this video because I'm going to show you step by step. The first function I want to start with is the equal COUNTA function. Okay, the COUNTA function counts the number of cells in a range that are not empty. Okay, so just me double click it, 1, 2. Okay, so if I just select this first subject that I have here in the cell B2, okay, that is maths. The COUNTA function is going to return for me the number 1. Why? Because the cell B1 is not empty. There is something in the cell B1. So if I press here the enter key, look, it's returned the number 1. Okay, I can just click here in the corner of the cell, click, hold, and drag down. Just click, hold, and drag all the way down. Now every time the COUNTA function identifies that is something in the cell, it's returned for us the number 1. However, if there is nothing in the cell is empty, it's going to return the number 0. Now if the number 1 appearing every time there is a subject in the cells and the 0 appearing every time the cell is blank, we can move on to the next logical step. That is, if I have a number 1 in the previous cell, I need to add 1 unity for the following row. So if I have here the number 1, I add 1, and then I'm gonna have the number 2, and then I add 1 unity, and then I'm gonna have the number 3, and then 4, and then 5. No, because it's a blank row. Okay, so I can't add anything here, and then here it's gonna take the greatest value that I have in the previous range, and then it's gonna add the number 1. So what is the greatest number that I have in the previous range? The number 4. Okay, so 4 plus 1, I have 5. Think about that. We can use the function max here in Excel to help us to solve that problem. So let's make it. However, before we move on to the max function here in Excel, let me just show you a practical example. So just by looking in this number that I just write right here, what is the greatest number? We know that is 109. I just can use the equal max function to return for me what is the greatest number that I have in the range that I select. So I'm going to press enter. Okay, it's returned 109. However, if I change, let's say this number 1 right here, I'm going to change it to 1000. And then I'm going to press enter. The max function just update for me, taking the greatest number that I have in my range. Think about that. We can use the max function to help us solving the problem that we have. To just take the greatest number in our range and then add 1 unity. That way we can make a sequence in a smart way here in Excel that's always working. So I just open this first cell right here if you double click, and then I'm gonna add. So I just want to use the plus sign, okay, plus sign, and then I'm gonna use the max function, double click it. So what is our range? Okay, I know that my range is all the column A. However, I just need to select it row by row. So let's say here I want to just select the first cell right here, A1, 2. So I just need to press the column key, okay, column, and then I'm gonna select just the second cell right here that I have, and then I'm gonna press F4 key to lock, to freeze the reference in the cell. We're gonna understand exactly why should we just lock the cell in just a moment. Okay, close parentheses and then enter. Now I just can click in the corner of the cell, click, hold, and drag down, and let's see what's gonna happen. Now we just need to hide all the numbers in the sequence that appears when the cell is blank. So to make that, to solve the problem, we can use the if function. So equal if, double click it, 1, 2, okay. What is our logical test? if the subject is equal to nothing, how can I say to Excel if it's equal to nothing? I can just open and close quotations mark. Then I'm gonna use comma. So if our subject is equal to nothing, I want the Excel to return nothing. So I'm gonna open and close quotations marked, and then I'm gonna press comma. So if our subject is equal to nothing, the if function returns nothing. However, if it's not equal to nothing, I mean, if you have something in the cell, the if function is going to return the COUNTA function plus the max function. Then I'm going to press enter, enter again, and yeah, we have our result. Now we can just click, hold, and drag down and see how it's gonna work. We just finished our auto sequence here in Excel. Whenever you type a new subject, if you skip rows, or whatever you need to do here in your sequence, you can just select a row and then type whatever you want. Let me just ABC subject, and then I'm gonna press enter. Look, the sequence function that we create just update the numbers following the sequence that we create. Always add one unity to the following row. Just to fix all this information in our brain, let me just explain step by step just one more time. So here we just use the if function to hide every time we have a blank cell in the subject, we hide the sequence number, okay? So this is why we just use the if function. The COUNTA function returns for us every time the subject, that there is something in the subject, it's returned the number 1. If there is a blank cell, it's returned 0, okay? And the max, let's say here the max, is gonna take the greatest number in the range that we select, and then it's gonna return for us. So let's say in this cell that I select here, we have the if function that we already understand how it's work. I have the COUNTA and the max. The COUNTA in this case, in this scenario right here, is just return for us the number 1, okay? Because the cell contains something, it's not blank. So it's returned for us the number 1. So let me just mark here if the number 1. Okay, so we have the number 1. And for the max function, it's gonna return the greatest value that we have. So if we have in the range the number 1, 2, 3, and 4, what is the greatest number that we have in this range? The number 4, okay? So we have here the number 4. However, it's not just the 4 and the 1, they separate the values. We are adding this value to each other. So COUNTA is equal to 1, and 1 plus the max is 4, so we have 1 plus 4, that is 5. So let's check it out if the row number 7 is equal to the result that is 5. Let me press enter. Yeah, it's 5. So this is how our auto sequence function is working here in Excel. And if you have any doubts, you can ask me, just comment in the section below, and I see you in the next video.